Am I where I need to be?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Tunnel Vision, a show presented to you by USCFootball.com. We're back here with the Thursday crew. I'm your host, Jack Smith, joined by RJ Abeytia and Ryan Abraham in the Tunnel Vision studios to talk some USC football and preview USC's bout with Arizona this coming Saturday down in Tucson, Arizona. Ryan, RJ, I'm glad to be back with you guys. It's good to have, another crew in set.
Yeah, we're here. We're back. Yeah, I've been on a Thursday show in a while.
The original lineup is back.
The original lineup, I love it. Does it feel like we've not had football for like a month?
It kind of does.
Does it feel weird?
Well,
I feel a little weird.
A little bit, yeah.
I was sick for Utah, and then the bye week, and now we're coming here on this week, so it feels really weird.
Did I do your chair for Utah or something? I can't remember what we did. Something like that. Or maybe we didn't do one.
It wasn't a show for
we
Utah.
didn't do it, Utah. Oh, because we had Jack on the shelf, which is not good.
Well, it's been a month. It'll be a month between home games, right? So that I think that really kind of makes it feel like
a little bit.
There's been a lag.
The bye week, the sort of hangover from the Utah game, and I think people are fired up for this one. Just the vibe you get around campus, just people want to get back on the field. And I think even after the game, they were talking about let's go practice right now. It would have been better if you had a home game, like if the Cal game was coming up or something, as opposed to going on the road for Arizona. But I'm really curious to see how this team responds, because obviously the last thing, you were leading or, tied or leading for 59 minutes plus, and then at the very end, you lose that game. Heartbreaker. Caleb Williams crying. You got a week off. You sort of a lot of extra time to absorb that loss, like the bounty, the quicker picker up, or just absorbing all of it, absorbing all the juices of that loss. And now you get to go on the road and take on a team that's really, really bad on defense and then pretty good on offense.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it, to me, that I'm really interested in is just to see USC physically, because Lincoln Riley made it very clear during the bye week this was not going to be easing up on the throttle.
True.
Especially given the nature of the loss, right? USC struggled on defense. They struggled to tackle. It was rough, right? And so Lincoln Riley made it clear last week this was going to be physical. This is real practice. This wasn't going to be a rest week. We know, I think, from talking to Brett Nealon, they got Saturday off. They got last Saturday off to just be college football fans. But aside from that, it's been full go. So you're just kind of curious about, I think our anxiety for them, it's like a trillion times, right? To be in their game uniforms. You're sitting on, how many times on campus have they been asked about the Utah game at this point? You know what I mean? So I do think there's some anxiety, and I think it's largely kind of positive, just ready to go that we picked up on from them this week.
Yeah,
exactly. I think we're ready to go on the podcast. It feels good to be back, even though it has felt like a very long time.
Do this.
Since we've been in the studio. As always, leave your guys' comments on YouTube, and I don't know, Ryan, are we on Facebook today?
We're not on Facebook, so I'm still working on that. I apologize if any of the Facebook people that are watching live on YouTube or on Twitter, thank you for doing that. And you can leave your comments on YouTube, and Jack can put them up on the screen. It's been a while with I don't know, we had some weird Facebook permission thing. So I'm working with 247 on it. Hopefully we can get that resolved soon. I did talk to someone this week about it, so my apologies that we don't have Facebook going yet. I know there's a lot of Facebook, listeners and viewers, so my apologies that we're not live on Facebook right now.
Yeah, well, if you're on YouTube, leave your comments down below, and I'll be able to put them on the screen. Leave some questions that we can respond to at the end of the show. If you just write question or leave a question mark at the end, I'll be able to filter through them, and we can cycle through kind of the back half of the show and respond to some questions. But I wanted to start off today's show with something that we were just kind of mentioning, which was the energy in and around practice from the players, the coaching staff, and just the overall vibe. I thought there were a lot of encouraging signs morale-wise coming off of a big loss against Utah and the bye week. USC, you can think about possibly coming out and not having as much energy after something like that, but it feel like there was more energy, and that's what the players were saying too. So I would say that morale-wise, confidence-wise, energy-wise, there were a lot of encouraging signs around USC practice today, even talking to the players after practice.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to some national podcasts, like John Canzano was talking about this today when they were previewing the game, and he's covers the Pac-12 and does a great job doing it. He was at the Utah game, and he said, you have all these players that came in from other places. Were you worried about, okay, now they lost, are they going to like check out and stuff? I never got that vibe at all. Like, first, the chemistry on the team is way better than I thought it would be. Like, we talked about this a bunch of times. This isn't like a group of mercenaries. This is guys that came together, and I feel like they are rallying around each other, that this isn't going to be a loss is sinking the ship. A loss, I think it's a rallying cry, to be honest. And I think that's what we've seen this week, but I don't know. What do you think, RJ?
Well, I think you're right. And I think Mekhi Blackman, transfer, so kind of a perfect example of what we're talking about, said he actually made it a point from the Utah game through the bye week to make sure he was picking guys up, to even actually be a little bit more vocal and be more encouraging and make sure that guys, he said, the classic 24-hour rule, right? Like, that loss should not be taken any further. There were teaching points, areas of improvement, whatever.
Yeah.
But he seemed to feel like the team's attitude was kind of where it needed to be. And, if you go back, I think, to the Stanford game, one of the things that stood out was, if you remember the post-game press conference, Lincoln Riley referred to USC's bad history at Stanford as if it was his own.
Yeah.
And a number of I think Travis Dye made a similar quote of like, we USC have not done well at Stanford. You know what I mean? And I just thought that really kind of struck with me. Like, these guys are very USC now. They're not, Lincoln Riley is not the former Oklahoma coach, now current. You know what I mean? He's USC's coach, right? Travis Dye is USC's running back. And I think that attitude, for whatever we don't know about this team, they've come together. They're a team. This isn't a group that, at this point, we can say with any evidence, doesn't like each other. I think they really do like each other. I think they like playing together, and I think we've seen that in a 6-1 start.
And I think it's funny, you mentioned some of those guys that when you have a team that's put together this way, where there's a bunch of guys that are, the Kalen Bullocks or the Tuli Tuipulotus that were, the leftovers, the guys that came over, and then a bunch of new players, when you have a Mekhi Blackman who's emerging as a leader on the defensive side, or a Travis Dye who's calling players out and, and being a leader. Obviously, Caleb Williams, like, to get transfers to come in, a couple of them from Pac-12 schools, and really, even like Austin Jones when they, he played against Stanford. You're seeing these guys come in and play like these leadership roles, and I think that's a really good sign to see. Like, it's not just like Caleb Williams isn't here to like get a bunch of NIL deals and just, try to win the Heisman. And like, these guys are part of a team. And I think you have to give Lincoln Riley credit for assembling that, because you could bring in really good players, but somehow he was able to bring in a whole bunch of guys that seemed to be on the same page. And to get the transfers, especially from in-conference, being leaders on this team, sort of give an indication of what USC's player leadership was like before too. But they brought in some guys. Yeah. It starts with the coach leadership.
Well,
sure.
And, I think it's also a big thing for, we talked about Josh Follow and Michael Jackson, the third, coming out and scoring those touchdowns in that Utah game. And the whole idea of, like, you talked about guys who are candidates to check out. If you're the leftovers on a team when a new staff comes in, you're prime candidates to be guys who checked out.
Yeah.
And not only did these guys not check out, they hung in for 6 games of not getting any action, but still working, still being productive. And when their moment came, they stood up and they answered. And Lincoln Riley was almost as happy for them
100%, yeah,
in the aftermath of that as he has been for any of his transfers, for any of things that Caleb Williams has done, for any of his for Mario Williams, guys he's already known. There hasn't been an our guys, their guys divide.
Right.
That we've been able to perceive. I think we would all kind of agree on that.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. I mean, you remember even just last year, there was like a Texas versus California thing. Like there were cliques. There were some Mean Girls stuff going on, and I don't feel that anymore.
No.
Sorry for the reference. I don't know if you got that one.
I know what Mean Girls is. And,
Oh, thank you. All right, finally.
I don't want to distract
We
from the
did-
show.
We
wish
just
you-
hop a decade till Jack gets it. We tried the 80s, no luck. We tried the 90s, nothing. 2000s, though, okay. Somebody, an older brother, somebody told him
Well,
something.
someone thought I didn't know Star Wars, so I hate to distract the show, but I looked up for a second, and Cam Rising isn't playing for Utah.
Wait.
He didn't start.
Well,
Wow.
that's a worthy distraction. But I do want to just finish up that one quick thing. I would say
That's crazy.
7 games into the year, a lot of what I thought we'd get from Lincoln Riley we've gotten, but I've been surprised about the human element with him. I've been surprised about, I don't think there's a better word, like the affection. He's really fond of this team.
Yeah.
I think it's real. I don't think he's just throwing that out there. I don't think he's the kind of guy who puts fake emotion out there. He doesn't put a lot of emotion out there, so when he does, I think it means something.
Yeah.
And I really do think like he's built something real. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's the scoreboard that's going to matter. It's the wins and the losses, but there's a lot of reasons to feel good about this team. And I think that's maybe the biggest surprise about what this season and what USC has become to this point in the year.
College football's changed, and I know we have some fans that don't like it. There's a lot of changing going on, and I think you have to adapt to it. But it's not always going to be good. Like for whatever reason, you see like a Texas A&M that has a very effective collective that brought in the best recruiting class we've ever seen. Like all the rankings that you've ever done. Like this was the highest rated class in history. And they're not doing very well. It's not like all those freshmen are playing, but a bunch of those guys have got suspended. There's been a lot of. It's not easy to bring together a whole bunch of talent. Like Phil Jackson was a great coach for a reason, that he could take a Scottie Pippen or a Michael Jordan or a Shaq and a Kobe. Like to put those egos and all that stuff together, there's a talent to be able to do that. So you got to give Lincoln Riley credit for that. I'm not saying Jimbo Fisher can't, but they've added all this 5-star talent, and there's obviously some problems on that team. And maybe it's different when you're adding established college players and stuff, but you could have brought in a whole bunch of guys that really, you bring in the Biletnikoff Award winner, Jordan Addison, for him to not check out of the, was it the Oregon State game or whatever, like he caught the touchdown at the end, really wasn't targeted at all. The offense was pretty terrible. And you'd be like, why did I come here? Why, no, he was in the whole time. He would block, he would do whatever you need to do, and he made the play at the end of the game when you needed him to make it. So all that stuff is an indication of that. You're right. Like I feel like these are a bunch of guys that are playing for each other, and it didn't have to be that way.
And I would think, Lincoln Riley mentioned this theoretically at the start of the year when he came around. Like this isn't going to be the model. This isn't going to be the blueprint. You know what I mean? Like,
right. You don't want to do this every year.
If USC tried this 10 times in a row, there's nothing that says it would work this smoothly the other 9 times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a reason you don't want to bring in 35 guys that you don't know, who have never played a single game together. That's the other thing that you got to realize, right, is that this roster has played 7 total games together.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the age. You can refer to individual veterans or guys who have been through this or been through that, but it's the unit that matters, right? It's the 11 guys, the 22 guys, right? They're only 7 games into their status. Like that's the era. It's 7 games old at this point. And I think what we've seen off the field is as encouraging as 6-1 has been on the field.
Yeah. I love when we get to talk about like different rivalries, and when you hear from players that saw this from, when Travis Dye was talking about playing Oregon State, like I played those guys a bunch of times or whatever, like that stuff is it's kind of fun. Like, oh, that's a whole different perspective, or
Absolutely.
Like Eric Gentry had played, in front of fans at Utah, where Raylan Goforth didn't, because he went there in 2020 when there wasn't no fans. So some of the stuff like that, you get these like different perspectives too. And I think those are all teachable moments. Like everyone can kind of share their experiences, and there's a lot of kind of Pac-12 influences there where you might step up and talk. Eric Gentry might have been able to tell people about what it's like to play in front of the Muss, where a lot of the guys on the team never would have had that experience.
Well, that scene, right? The Eric Gentry scene is one of the iconic images. Again, it's so funny, right? Because they lost the game, right? But between Follow and Michael Jackson and Eric Gentry hobbling out of the injury tent onto the field to pump up his guys.
Tyron Hudson catching a touchdown.
Yeah, there were a lot of signs that what we've been hearing about this team's chemistry were validated.
Yeah.
I thought, coming out of that game. And now I think it's about moving past the moral victories because there are still some pretty big things for this team to play for right now.
Yeah. I think if you're like an Eric Gentry and you were a freshman All-America and you come over from Arizona State and you could say, we could ask you a million questions. You could talk about where these are my teammates and blah, blah, blah. You're not hopping out of the injury tent you could lie. Like you could basically say, yeah, and not care about the team. You're not hopping out of the injury tent like as a ruse, like that was real. Like those were real emotions, and it meant a lot to him. It meant a lot to the players, and I think that's a genuine aspect. I don't know how we kept going on.
Not the move of a Merc. Let's just say that, right? like that's.
I love the Stanford terms. Perfect. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely agree.
Smart guy.
I think back to what Caleb Williams said yesterday, because he got emotional after the game, and he mentioned that the entire locker room was pretty emotional, and he said like the team just loves each other. He loves the team, but he said that also, and this is the part that stuck out to me, is like there was just a quiet confidence and just a swagger that like even though they lost, I think that they learned a lot about themselves in the Utah game, and they obviously continued that into the bye week, trying to make the most of it. Tui Plotu talk about how much energy there was, but it definitely felt that swagger, and I know that we kind of went on talking a lot about just the way they're feeling, but the way Caleb said it when I asked him about it yesterday is like, the bye week was effective for this run we're gonna go on. Some players might say, we've got a chance to run the table. Like, no, Caleb Williams is confident. He believes that USC is going to go on a run, not throwing in the can or the might. He's pretty confident, and that's something that I've felt a little bit more this week, which I was kind of surprised despite, the loss and the bye. They might come out a little flat. I thought they were very energized and very confident.
And things are setting up well, right? I mean, Arizona is probably going to be the toughest game over the next 3 weeks because it's on the road. And, RJ and I think, Jack, we were talking about it's hard in the Pac-12 to win on the road. I do the podcast of champions. We talk about all the Pac-12 teams. And I asked Lincoln Riley about this today, about playing on the road, and he said, there's just a lot of good teams. It's hard to get road wins in the conference. USC likely has the best road win in the entire conference, winning at Oregon State. That was a weird game where they, only scored 17 points. Easily Oregon State could have won that game, obviously, but that's a big one. That's a big road win. Oregon got one at Washington State. That Washington State was in control of the game, and they had to certainly coug it at the end. Mm-hmm. That was a 3-point. You saw Oregon destroy UCLA at home. That was a 3-point win on the road. That the game they should have lost too. So I mean, both good road wins in the Pac-12 could have easily not been. What's the best road result? Like USC losing by a point in the last second to Utah might be the best road result. I don't know if we're going to see anyone else go into Rice-Eccles and be that close. It's just hard, and there's a lot of double-digit home dogs this week in the Pac-12. Arizona is one of them. Is it going to be closer than that? So it's, for whatever reason, that's just one of the trends I've seen in the Pac-12. It's just hard. You play a lot worse on the road. We'll see. With Utah, Jack mentioned Utah's playing Washington State right now, and Cam Rising isn't starting. Tavion Thomas is out. I think one of the other running backs is out. For whatever reason, it's just not easy to get these road wins. Actually, it would be a good result for USC if Utah ends up losing, right? Because so if they go on the road and lose to Washington State, so you should, it's FS1 if you guys want to, put it on the side while you're watching tunnel vision.
Yeah.
But it's just know going into this, it's going to be, going on the road is not easy. USC's looked, I was really impressed with USC's offense when they went to Salt Lake City because the offense looked terrible at Oregon State. They handle the noise a lot better. It's not going to be the same kind of environment, but it is homecoming, I think, for Arizona.
Halloween, Pac-12 After Dark,
Tucson,
Gronk honorary captain.
Yeah, there's going to be some weird stuff. You're going to get Lincoln Riley talked about this. I think it was at the Utah game where you had to overcome a lot. There's a lot to overcome. It was the emotional night with the 22s and all all that. You're going to probably have to overcome a bunch of stuff there too. Now Arizona's USC should score a lot of points on Arizona, but Arizona can put up points, and USC's defense certainly been suspect at times. So I think you get through this one. You just want to get a win on the road. If you win by 10 or something, great. Come home. You get, Colorado and Cal and Colorado, and then you got the big rivalry games coming up. But to your point, Jack, about making a run, it's certainly set up for USC to make a run. If you end up 9-1 going into the UCLA game, I think you're feeling pretty good about stuff, So, but you got to there's going to be steps at a time. The first step is go on the road again and get a win in the Pac-12, which, like we talked about, it's not easy.
Yeah, there's always plot twists, right?
Yes.
And I think if you look at the next 3 games for USC, they will be favored in all 3 of those games. They will be double-digit favorites.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going out on a
This
big
will be the
limb.
closest spread, probably, the 15 and a
I
half.
think that's
Yeah,
fair.
Yeah.
But you do have to be prepared for a plot twist, for something to go wrong, and for you to have to win a game in an unconventional way, or maybe it goes on a little bit longer than, competitively than you think maybe it should.
Yes.
But I think kind of your larger point of just the only thing USC needs to have momentum right now is to win the game.
Yes.
We talked, on previous tunnel visions, where you were, well, we'll just say you were on assignment, but I mean, no one really knows where you were when you disappear on us. But we talked about how a win wasn't enough in games like Fresno State
Yeah.
or maybe Arizona State or Washington State, where like you're trying to establish your level of play. You should play your level of play. It shouldn't be this thing where like we're playing down to this team, but we're up for this team, But I would say coming off a bye, coming off a loss, on the road against a potent offense, the win's a win.
Yes.
Yes, Arizona's defense is putrid, but their offense is legit. Their offense is no joke.
Yeah.
And by the way, not to tease an article that may or may not be coming out in the next 24 hours,
A little preview.
but the big talking point, the big concern this week, for 2 weeks, has been tackling, right? And Arizona has some of the best. In fact, I think they've got the number one. I think Jacob Cowing is the number 1 yards after catch receiver
Oh, wow. Okay.
in the Pac-12. So Arizona's good in ways where USC has concern. So as imbalanced as it is for the USC offense against the Arizona defense, it's not going to be a cakewalk for the USC defense. This will be a legit test. So again, to the point, if you win it, you're going to feel really good about this.
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily a style point situation, the spread notwithstanding.
Yeah, Kincaid had over 100 yards after contact, right? So, I mean, that's definitely a concern. Tackling, we got to hear from Alex Grinch, and he kind of talked about that a little bit too. It was more about, what was the term he was using? It was like finishing?
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily like getting a position. It was more like finishing, grab a body part,
Yep.
He made a clear distinction between dudes who just didn't want to stick their nose in and hit, and guys who were more than willing to be physical and just weren't finishing.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of what he indicated was the latter category.
Yeah.
Right. This USC team, I think of guys like Max Williams and Jalen Smith, who hit well beyond their listed height and weight.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a few guys. I think this USC defense has a lot of areas to improve. I don't think of them as a soft team. They're not a great defensive team right now.
Yeah.
Statistically, you can't call them that, but they are physical. I don't think of too many times this year where I thought, they were just consistently getting beat up. They've been beaten,
Yeah.
as in outplayed, outworked, or whatever, but not physically beaten.
Right.
And I haven't seen, and as opposed to last year, maybe the biggest contrast, I can't think of a single stretch of play this year where they've checked out or tapped out.
Right. No, I think you're exactly right. Yeah.
Even in the wake of the avalanche that Utah put on them,
No,
they
never
were
checked
hitting.
out.
They were still, it's not like they weren't there.
You're still trying. They just weren't. Then they would give up the big play. They weren't making that play.
Well, that was the frustration, right? I think Shotgun had a great picture of rising on the 2-point conversion. There's literally 2 USC guys that close. You know what I mean? So
Not
it's
quite.
not. It's just about being better. And to be honest with you, the big question for me that I don't have an answer to is inside of this final 5 games, how much better can this defense get? Like all fan bases, Alex Grinch, the coordinator, has taken it for 2 weeks. It's been pretty consistently, and statistically, it's not crazy. We're not trying to convince you that USC is an elite defense
Right.
and you're just off the mark. But Alex Grinch, in fairness, mentioned recency bias, right? Like, they are as much who they were through the first 6 as they were through the 4 quarters in Utah. You can't okay, well, these are the only 4 quarters we're going to judge you on. That's not how that works.
True.
Well,
Yeah.
people were there were some praise for Grinch after the second half against Washington State, where again they had another second half shutout. So I'm not going to go as far as to say that the Utah game is an outlier for the USC defense, because we saw that something was in the weeds, after the first couple games, where it's like one of these teams isn't going to make as many mistakes. They're going to score when they get in the red zone, and then USC is going to have some trouble. But RJ, I think you're right in the fact that last year USC got pushed around and bullied like on the playground. This year, even though they didn't make the play against Cam Rising, it's not like Cam Rising took on 2 tacklers and just willed his way into the goal line.
Yeah.
USC was in position and just missed, and that's what happens. And then that one play can decide the game, and that one play makes it so you don't have another big road win. You're not still undefeated, but it's not like Utah pushed around USC for the whole game. So I think USC was much more in control of their fate. They didn't make the play, but I think that is something that's a little bit different from last year.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Well, we can get into Arizona because we've hinted at some of the weapons they've got, and there's going to be some familiar names for USC fans, where quarterback Jayden de Laura transferred in from Washington State. You have Jacob Cowing at receiver, who's been statistically the best wide receiver in the Pac-12 this year. Tate Taroa McMillan, I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right, but T-Mac was a USC recruit that they went hard after him. He ended up picking Arizona. And then you've got a couple other guys, Dorian Singer. Someone asked about a tight end in the chat. They've got a sneaky tight end who's got, upwards of 25 receptions so far and has been slightly reliable for them, in Tanner McLaughlin. So Lincoln Riley mentioned it. Everyone's kind of been mentioning it this week. Maybe the best group of wide receivers that USC will play this whole year. They've got a tight end as well. They run the ball with a couple of guys, but they're going to throw the ball a lot, and that could give USC some fits because they really have a great skill position group.
Yeah, I asked Riley about, what makes this offense special. And, it's another dynamic quarterback. Now, USC's done well the last couple of years against Jayden de Laura when he was at Washington State. USC's best win in the, truncated Clay Helton era, season was on the road at Washington State. That was a good win.
They knocked him out, right?
Yeah, I think.
Washington State lost de Laura in that game.
I think they did.
It's one of the funny. It's one of the details that history forgets. I mean, I have to say, one of the weirdest things about last year was I've never seen a program more ecstatic about a win over Washington State. And I know that sounds like a lot of shade, but it's just like,
it was Dante Williams' first
USC's
game.
got how many national championships, how many Rose Bowl championships? I've never seen the peristyle was just gone wild with that game, and it was really funny because they played a great game. They really did. I think Drake London was out of his mind, as usual.
Makes sense.
But it was a much more competitive game while Jayden de Laura was in.
Yeah. And they knock him out. That's where the margin comes. And then, super dubious, I always think, is whenever you see a college guy come back into a game 2 quarters later. Yeah, that's probably something shouldn't be happening.
There's a protocol. We'll just leave it at that. But anyway, the point is that he can pass, and Jed Fish has coordinated an offense, and there are skill guys. McMillan is 6'5".
He can run. He can make you miss. He can do things with
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of I dug in pretty deep on a lot of the stats between him and Caleb Williams.
There's a whole chart going on here.
No. I have so much good stuff. And I don't want to give too much away because a lot of it's coming out in the article. But there are 2 areas where there's a real distinction. Number one, they both have 19 touchdown passes, but Jayden de Laura's got 7 interceptions.
Yeah.
Caleb Williams has 1. For all the things, there's a lot of different stats with Caleb that you can talk about to make him look pretty much however you want him to look if you dig deep enough. But 1 interception and keeping that turnover rate down is monstrous versus 7 interceptions. Now, the interesting thing is that he's only thrown 1. De Laura has only thrown 1 in the last 3 games.
So he's got better.
Which is something that Jed Fish talked about this week in the press conference. It's been a problem, and overall their profile is that it's a problem. But they've been better at the last 3 games. They didn't have a turnover against Washington. It doesn't sound like, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, but it doesn't sound like the Arizona offense was the reason that they couldn't beat.
I think they scored 39, but they just gave up 49.
Yeah, so
they've scored 30-plus points in 5 of 7 games, and yet they're still below 500.
Yeah, so they've done some good things on offense. There's reason to believe that they're going to be able to do things. The other thing that's really separated these 2 guys is that de Laura has had 17 passes dropped. Caleb Williams has had 9, and we're sitting here feeling like 9's a lot.
It felt like a lot.
We've talked a
lot.
We've talked a lot about Mario Williams. Mario Williams got 4, but Cowing has 7. So, like, the really good players for Arizona have been really good, but 17 drop passes is a lot of drop passes. I mean, just watching
Each one of them could kill a drive, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at, just think of how they've hurt some of USC's drives.
Yeah.
It's been enough to thwart an offense that good. So 17, twice as many. So that's why I think the details matter in this game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Keeping those advantages. If USC is the team that protects the ball, and if USC is the team that catches it and doesn't drop it, I don't see how the Arizona offense comes over the top and makes it a threat.
We don't have Chris Trevino on, but I would do, for whatever reason, when you were talking, RJ, USC has 1 turnover through 7 games. Like, we haven't talked about, I think I asked Lincoln Riley after 6 games, like, you've had 1 turnover. He's like, yeah, it's pretty amazing. They didn't get a turnover they didn't turn the ball over against Utah. Arizona's defense might be the worst they face all year, or one of them. They're bad. My gut's telling me that USC is going to get a turnover, like going to turn the ball over in this game for some reason.
I think we've gotten accustomed to
they just don't
not
turn it over.
expecting it, but like football games are supposed to have turnovers.
They're going to have them sometimes. Like, I feel like the odds are just you've been flipping a coin. It's been heads. Like, I just feel like this is going to be a tails. Like there's going to be a fumble or something's going to happen. Like, USC will turn the ball over in this game.
Well, yeah. I mean, like you said, with the coin flip, right? You have to keep betting on the thing that for some reason doesn't happen until it happens, because you just feel like the odds are still against
it's
it.
gonna happen.
But that margin is ridiculous. But I also would have to say, I think there was a pass. Caleb had an interception wiped off.
Yeah, he had a
because
couple
of a penalty. So maybe there've been 2 like that.
And there's been a couple muffed punts.
So there's been some stuff. But when I look at USC not turning the ball over, to me, that's far less fluky than the insane amount of turnovers USC's forced, right? We distinguished earlier in the year, there have been some great turnovers where pressure came, forced a bad throw, defensive back made the play. Those are kind of earned turnovers, as opposed to, there's also a bunch on the resume where a quarterback just threw it off the hands of his own guy, and a room service, pick happened. But I think you have to bet on it happening, but I also think you shouldn't just diminish it and dismiss it as not part of what they've done well.
They work at that. And I feel like this defense is opportunistic. Like, they try to force turnovers, but that you're not going to get that every time.
Right.
And when you don't get sacks, and you don't get turnovers, the Utah game happens, and you're not getting stops at all, and you're just allowing, so it can be a little feast or famine. And there was definitely a lot of famine in the Utah game, and we'll see. I think for Arizona, if you give up a bunch of touchdown drives, but you force like 2 interceptions and get a fumble or something, like you're gonna win the game comfortably.
Yeah.
It's just if Arizona scored a whole bunch of times, but you don't get any turnovers and you never get de Laura down and force a negative play, all those things can kill drives. And USC didn't have any of those drive killing plays against Utah. Arizona's more likely to give those up. So you got to get some against the Wildcats.
Yeah, and I think, those are the 2 talking points for Alex Grinch, right? Tackling, get a guy down. If he makes a 5-yard catch, make it a 5-yard gain. Don't make it a 25-yard gain, right? And then, the other part is he talked very explicitly this week about wanting more pressure, specifically from the rush end position. It was kind of funny because I think that someone asked him about Nick Figueroa, who's been getting reps over there. And the question was sort of a ramp up to, how good has he been doing? And that kind of a thrust. But Grinch took it as we cannot find a guy to do this job. He's basically was matter of fact, as he kind of always is. He's like, Nick will play as long as Nick produces there. But we need more overall. We need more from that group. It wasn't an attack on Nick Figueroa, but it was we need to get pressure. And with both of these quarterbacks, one thing I will really say is, first of all, they're both used to getting pressured. It's just under 40% of their dropbacks that they're facing
for both
pressure.
Guys.
Yeah,
okay.
for both guys. So it's a comparable number. In fact, let's just be specific. Yeah, for Caleb, 37%. For Jayden de Laura, 37%. So they're pressured, but both of them are exceptional outside the pocket. They both make plays.
Yeah.
And we've seen that with Caleb Williams, right? I mean, how many times has it appeared, once again, you're this close to him, and somehow he's not sacked.
Yeah.
But USC is going to be facing a similar guy, you got to finish the plays. It's very much in line with what they've been preaching all week. Like, we're going to really see, okay, you guys told us you worked on this for 2 weeks.
Let's see what, did you really?
Yeah. Like, how did it go? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be very obvious on Saturday in that regard.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat saying, well, doesn't Arizona's offense match up well for USC's defense, given that, they don't run the ball quite as much, they throw the ball a lot? It's like, Utah barely ran the ball last week at all. USC sat back in a soft zone, and Utah dinked and dunked their way down the field to the tune of 42 points. So it'd just be, they couldn't really run the ball. USC did a good job stopping the run in that game, but they just really didn't stop the pass. So Arizona, one of the better passing teams in the country and in the Pac-12. It's like you would think earlier in the season, hey, this is a team that doesn't run the ball quite as much. USC's forced so many interceptions. But after the Utah game, you kind of wonder what the actual identity of the defense is. Mekhi Blackman said, they're excited to go against a team that throws so much because that's just chances for them to make plays on the ball. And they did have some of those plays against Utah where Kalen Bullock on the throw that Cameron Rising made in the end zone. You talk as much as you want about the roughing the passer, but there was still a great play on the back end by the defensive backs, making a play on an underthrown ball that maybe shouldn't have been thrown by Rising. So there were plays that were made on the football that one of them got taken back, and we're not talking about the refs because that was pretty much the entirety of the Sunday after Utah. But if you don't focus on anything happening around the line of scrimmage or behind the offensive line, that's a great play by Kalen Bullock who came down with an interception. So I think that part of the defense, I think, still is better than it might have looked against Utah, where I think they're going to be better at defending the pass. They're not going to be as committed to stopping the run. I think what they were kind of doing was committing to stop the run up front and then playing soft and trying to let Utah only get the short play. I think they might be a little bit more aggressive this time, going one-on-one, trying to get the ball back because they know that Arizona's going to be throwing the ball so much. They might try to be a little bit more aggressive as opposed to what I think we saw the first half of the Arizona State game as well, where they were really just letting the offense come to them, that they ended up fixing in the second half of that game, but just couldn't figure out against Utah.
Yeah, and I think the threat of the run, and that's something that USC was giving up a lot of, the edge runs and all that stuff. So I think there was a conscious effort to try to stop that, and then they sort of suffered on what they did well with pass defense. And I think in this one, you're probably not as worried about the run, so maybe you can focus more on what you do well in the pass defense. So yeah, in that respect, I think it'll be a good matchup, like strength on strength.
Well, and it actually kind of makes me wonder if, despite how good USC's offense is, that Lincoln Riley doesn't get tempted to run the ball and shorten the game a little bit.
Yeah.
USC has, again, of the things that kind of maybe surprised us this year, although it was funny because Lincoln Riley, I think he took it a little personally when I was like, you had a 15-play drive. Maybe it was Fresno State. I don't know. It was one game, and I said, and the vibe was like, I don't feel like we see a lot of those from you. And he's like, well, you see a lot more than you think you do, kind of a thing. But they've had 7-minute drives this year.
Yeah.
They've had game-shortening drives. And trust me, it's not like Lincoln Riley's ever going to not want to score points. But you just kind of wonder, first of all, just health-wise, for your sake of your players, do you really want to play a 50-40 game on Saturday?
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? If you can play a 38-24, if you can play a 31-7, you know what I mean? Just because you shortened it because you could run the ball and they couldn't, I think it might be a little bit tempting, depending, obviously, how the game flows, how it starts is going to have a huge part of that. But I really wonder if he doesn't have the opportunity to run it, that he just doesn't take it, because the more you're out there, the more not good things can happen, right? If you're on defense.
I mean, it's a good point. You're watching this Utah game. They're without a bunch of key players, and that was from after a bye week, a very physical game where a lot of points were scored and a lot of plays. We don't know who's going to suit up for USC. I mean, we can talk about the injury stuff a little bit. We don't get a lot of info, but Lincoln Riley was asked about it today. But you might not see Jordan Addison or Eric Gentry or Andrew Voorhees, or you might not see Raylan Goforth. Like, there might be a whole bunch of key guys out for that one. Again, in a very physical contest, road game, if you can somehow just beat Arizona just by running Travis Dye 25 times,
I think that's what you do.
Yeah, I think it's probably the smart thing to do.
There's been many games where I do the halftime shows for the student radio, and I write up notes for the thing, and I'm like, USC ran the ball so well. why didn't they run it more? And I think coming into the year, I was a little surprised early on how well USC was able to run the ball. Specifically, I think it was that Fresno State game where they had the 2 100-yard rushers. And you just kind of go and it's like, I feel like USC could be a run-first team if they really wanted to. The offensive line's been so good in run blocking, and the running backs have been great. It's like sometimes I feel like they do get a little bit away from the run, but especially since they're such a dangerous passing offense, the run's just been so effective. And I know they don't want Travis Dye to get hurt, and he's been banged up throughout the season, playing through everything like a warrior. But it does feel like with the running backs they have, the offensive line, like this very well could be a team that runs the ball for more yards than they pass for a certain game, if that's what they wanted. And I know that's not Lincoln Riley's MO, but I think it's at least good that they have the ability to go with either.
I also think the depth maybe starts to come into play, because that's another question Lincoln Riley got kind of pointed from someone this week was, where's Austin Jones been?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like he wasn't performing in his appearances, but, Lincoln Riley was kind of blunt about it. Like, Travis Dye's been playing really, really well. You got to have a reason to take a guy off the field as much as a guy's got to earn a reason on. But I think when you get into the second half of the season, for all the reasons we just talked about, especially the fact that Travis Dye, even though we're kind of advocating use him to shorten the game for USC's defense, he's not a huge dude. He's not necessarily a guy you want to spend 30 carries on week after week after week. So I think, whether they're available or not, certainly you're dealing with a team that's 7 games into their season. I think this is a time when maybe you see more of that depth. I think maybe Austin Jones gets some more work. I think some of the other receivers get some more work in this game just as a result of attrition and for the fact that you're going to need all these guys for that final stretch, right? Just more things to consider as you go into that game.
If you're like walking around the USC campus and you don't know any of the players and like you see like Travis Dye and his mustache kind of walk into your accounting class, or would you instantly go, yeah, that's the star tailback of the team?
Well, you're more likely to think he's the TA. Well, I mean, let's be real. The dude's 26 also.
Is he really 26?
Yeah. I've wanted to ask him that too, because he's on a pedestal now. Travis Dye, if you Google Travis Dye and leader, I feel like it's like 400 search results, right? But I just wonder, is he like that in life too? He's also a 26-year-old in classes as well. Is he the leader in all the classes? Is he? You know what I mean?
He's getting married and everything, right?
Yeah. Is he having them over? I don't know.
I was shocked to learn he was in classes at all. I thought that he was kind of just a grad student.
He's getting his doctorate or something.
Yeah. But yeah,
probably. Yeah.
They mentioned this week he had a school project, and I was like, I 100% thought he did not take any classes, because I see players walking around campus and I'm like, I've never seen Travis Dye, so I just assume he's 26. He's just not in classes. He's just playing football for the semester. So I was kind of surprised to learn that. There was a specific question that kind of asked and hinted at the depth from Kevin on YouTube, asking that if Addison doesn't play, do you think that the Arizona wide receiver top 4 is better than the USC wide receiver top 4?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, heading into the game, I think you're going to kind of wait and see what happens in this one. But they've done really well. Without Addison, you might give the edge to Arizona, but it's close.
I don't know. USC's got some pretty good guys.
I mean, Mario Williams is
that's the thing. There's a whole layer of dudes who we still haven't even. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's Michael Jackson,
guy,
C.J. Williams.
Yeah, C.J. Williams was a much higher rated recruit than Tate.
Yeah, Kyle Ford was a 5-star. There's dudes that just aren't.
Put it like this: USC is far less compromised if they have to play this game without Jordan Addison than Arizona would be if any of those 3 guys were unavailable.
I think that's a very good point.
Yeah, Shotgun just texted me that Travis Dye's only 23. So RJ, I don't know where you're getting your age.
Oh, his number's 26.
Yeah, I was gonna say
we'll
26.
I just blame it on that. Yeah, 26 is a bit of a stretch.
I feel like I thought I would know that. I was like, I'll trust RJ if he's 20. Yeah, so 23. Thanks, Shotgun.
Yeah, all right.
He's number 26. But he's 23.
Yeah. But in reality,
we didn't say he was age 26. We just said he is 26. So maybe we were talking about his number.
He owns that number.
I gotta wear that. Shotgun's our editor.
Yeah.
He never misses. He never misses, and he never misses any of my misses.
Well, I think he's jealous of Ryan that he doesn't get to be on the podcast with us today.
Yeah.
He texted me before, am I not on? I'm like, I love if he's here. I love it when he's going to be on. It's a little harder to do a remote. So if we can get 3 people that are in the studio, it's just a little better. That's all. I love having Shotgun on.
Yeah.
He's great, obviously.
Well, and obviously he's good at fact checking us as well.
Yeah,
we've got a couple other questions on YouTube. Oscar asks, why didn't SC let Utah score on the last drive and then give Caleb 1 to 2 minutes to drive and get the winning field goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're putting the Utah game in the rearview mirror, but yeah, I agree. I mean, I think they mishandled the last drive. Like they should have called timeouts. You have to get a feel for, and I was talking to David Woods about this. Did you guys watch the UCLA Oregon game? So Dan Lanning, we call him Land Danning on the show.
Sure.
Out-coach Chip Kelly. Like that was a game you could tell that there wasn't a lot of defense being played. Every possession mattered. They went for an onside kick early on to steal a possession. They did better in the middle, the middle 8, the end of the first half, beginning of the second half, knowing that UCLA was going to get the ball to start the second half. Got up a couple of scores, knowing it was just going to be a back and forth thing. Yeah, you're still going to try to force a field goal instead of a touchdown on defense, but knowing that it's just going to be one of those back and forth games. If you can steal a possession here and there, that's a smart way to manage the game. The way it was coming down the end of the Utah game, there's no way would you have thought that USC was going to get a stop. Like you have to think about our best chance to win this game is by getting the ball back and I don't think you let them score, but you call your timeouts to get more time left on the clock. So I would have said that's what you do, not let Utah score. I don't mind you trying to stop them, but call timeouts earlier on to preserve some of the clock.
Yeah, I think that the thing that rankles or frustrates in a situation like that is the clock is not going to save you. There have been some games. I think there was a playoff game in the NFL last year, the 49ers and the Cowboys, where they literally just the clock ran out on the Dallas Cowboys. But in most scenarios, especially in a game where the clock stops on first down conversions, like you're not going to get saved by the clock. So your mindset has to be, we're either getting a stop or we need enough time to win the game.
Yeah.
Because if you save time and you get the stop, that's not a huge problem.
Right.
There's not a difference between taking 3 knees and taking 1 knee, right? But there is a difference between getting the ball with 35 to 45 seconds left and a minute and 45 seconds left.
Huge difference.
There's a huge difference in the way you operate. And then the one thing I will just say, the play within the moment that crushed that last surge from USC's offense was they lost the time on the pick return that was negated.
And the time on the kick return
kick return,
negated.
which I didn't think they should even return the kick, and they returned it to the 50. But I thought
Gary Bryan against UCLA disagrees. That's like that. I have the same argument, but then I just remember back to that UCLA game where he.
I would rather
USC
the way USC's performed on kick return this year. I would rather Caleb Williams have 8 extra seconds than even if you get a good return, because
I think that's fair.
They got a good return and they got a penalty. So I just feel like you're going to waste time and maybe get something good, but you're definitely wasting time. I would rather just give me the time, start at the 25 and go. But we don't need to talk about the Utah game anymore. We're moving on.
Yeah, we've got a couple other questions. Not as many questions in the chat today. Make sure you guys leave some if you want us to answer them kind of right above.
Apparently Washington State scored a touchdown.
They did. 6, is it 6-7 nothing?
Clark
now?
Phillips fell down in the end zone. So I think he's
12
still
after
seeing
dark.
visions of Jordan Addison. But yeah, moving on from the Utah game, someone asked, did USC learn to cover the tight end down the middle? There weren't many questions asked about the tight end this week. It kind of seemed like a subject that SC players weren't talking about quite as much. I think I asked Mekhi Blackman about it. He didn't know Dalton Kincaid by name. And
that
so
was kind of funny. Yeah.
Asked him by number, and I don't know. I don't think Alex Grinch would talk about it. I don't know if he was asked this or you guys were in that scrum, but I guess, we don't really know much about whether USC learned to cover the tight end, but I'll bet you there was more of an emphasis after Kincaid went 16 of 16 catches on targets.
Well, this was, and again, not totally unexpected, but the peristyle has had no shortage of defensive coordinators suggesting what needed to happen schematically from a play calling perspective. But USC took that issue head on last week, at least verbally. And time and again, what they said was, we gave up catches, but we killed ourselves by not tackling and not finishing. And Kincaid specifically, I think if you go back to the film, there were multiple plays where a catch and an immediate tackle doesn't sink USC, but catch and lack of an immediate tackle created I mean, what did he have? What was it? 236, 240? I forget the number.
234.
When a tight end puts up over 2 bills on you, it's very rarely because he's catching 80-yard fly patterns.
He just had a catch at the line of scrimmage that he took for 15 yards.
So yeah, so there you're like 6 air yards, and then how many scrimmage?
It was a air yard.
And again, they're not really wrong either. You do need a better plan for the tight end, especially in a game like that where he's the guy that they're targeting. You
can't let 16 balls go to the tight end and every single one of them be successful. Like not a single one wasn't successful. Like that is insane. Like how does I don't know. That might be the worst performance against a single player USC's had in a long time, I would think.
Like a skill guy. Just constantly doing it where
you can have a guy catch like 2 80-yard bombs or something, but like just the consistency that Kincaid had. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen something like that before. 16 of 16. Like, what? Like, I don't know.
Consistency with the lack of suspense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so
because
clear.
everyone knew where the ball was going
They didn't
at a certain point.
I mean, they really weren't finding many other weapons outside of him. Bailey had he had some times where it was hard for Mekhi Blackman to match up. They had that one deep ball down to the goal line, but outside of that, like, no one else was really making plays. I was really shocked that, like, I know it's not the Alex Grinch way to completely sell out on one player, but at the same time, it forced someone else on Utah to make a play, which I was kind of surprised by. So you're obviously not going to face a Dalton Kincaid every single game, and USC has had some problems guarding tight ends in the past couple of years, but I don't think that you're going to have a tight end going for 265 yards on you and a couple touchdowns and 100+ after the catch. But sometimes, all it takes is one play where the offense needs a first down, they turn to the tight end. I think that Arizona has a good enough tight end in Tanner McLaughlin to possibly make one or two of those clutch plays if they really need it. But again, you're not going to be facing Dalton Kincaid, but at the same time, I think it's definitely true that USC should have had a better plan going into that game.
If Arizona has a huge game, it's going to be like de Laura and one of those receivers. They're like have some crazy game. It's not going to be.
Yeah, I mean, look, McLaughlin's 6'5".
Yeah,
there's almost no way Arizona doesn't try him.
Yeah.
If you're watching that Utah film, okay,
might as well try that.
Yeah, let's give that a roll. So that's the thing that's so fascinating, right? Is that I think, like we said before, like all the stuff that we've talked about, USC's going to get a very clear chance to demonstrate what they've learned and what they've done. It's not even, it's not a thing where like you're playing a Stanford or you're playing like an Army or where there's no comparison to what you just saw. So we don't really know what to do with this. I think Arizona has seen what works. I think the conference has seen what works. And we're at the stage of the season now where when you find something against another team, it's in the game plan.
Yeah, you are going to.
There's not going to be we're this kind of team, so we won't use that. No, they're going to throw to McLaughlin. They're going to throw to those guys. They're going to throw it up in the air. T-Mac is 6'5". McLaughlin is 6'5". You're going to need answers there for sure.
Yeah, we've got another question. With Brendan Rice's lack of production, who could you see stepping up into his role?
I don't know if he has a role. I mean, just everyone has like roles.
Yeah, I don't know that I grant the premise necessarily.
Yeah.
Which is not to say he's had an enormous amount of production, but in this wide receiver room, again, and I think it's a good sign, this is very much a meritocracy.
Yeah.
This is very much, what did you show us this week?
Yep.
You know what I mean? For Michael Jackson, for Josh Follow, for all the receivers, Kyron Hudson.
Yep.
So I again, with these guys who have dips in their production statistically, it's not a simple thing of just, well, now that guy's done, who's coming in next? As Michael Jackson proved, you can sleep on a guy for 6 weeks, and there he is. I mean, again, how many times have we tried not to go back to the Utah game? But I feel like we're living in that Utah game. But, like, if USC holds on, that winning touchdown is like one of the biggest plays in this program in
Michael
the last
Jackson,
5 years. It's the biggest play of his career.
Yeah,
you know what
easy.
I mean? It's a huge thing. So I wouldn't fixate too much on individuals. I guess on a game to game basis.
Right
is what I'm saying with what they've got.
I mean, Rice, you got an easier stretch coming up. Rice could have, bunch of catches in all three of these games. Who knows? Like, I think it's just going to change from week to week. But I wouldn't say he had some role and now you got to find someone to replace his role. They've moved guys around. They've done different things.
It's a lot more fluid than that.
Yeah.
And I mean, from what Lincoln Riley said, he's very, I don't know what word I would use, but he's excited to see what could possibly come from Terrell Bynum, Kyron Hudson. We've already mentioned Michael Jackson. They've got C.J. Williams waiting in the wings at some point. And obviously there's still Brennan Rice and Mario Williams. Like Kyle Ford, too, who he said he's happy to have back healthy. So there's, I mean, as we knew coming into the season, there's a large surplus. There's like a surplus of wide receivers in the USC wide receiver room. So at some point, I think you're going to see them maybe not stepping into an individual role, but you could see him coming in for one or two plays and making a play like we saw from Michael Jackson and Kyron Hudson against Utah. A couple rapid-fire questions before we get to our predictions. Guy Smithson on YouTube asks, do you think USC sells out the Notre Dame game?
Oh. I think if USC beats UCLA and it's like a 10-1, I think so. Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame will sell tickets. Notre Dame's not very good. They have a Clemson game, like say Notre Dame beats Clemson. Who knows? We've seen Notre Dame do some weird stuff. But yeah, I think they have a good shot at selling that one out.
I mean, clearly that will be the best attended game of the year.
Yeah.
Right? We're just debating how well attended
if it's sellout or not.
Will it be? But, I don't know that Saturday after Thanksgiving game in my mind is always like, oh, who wouldn't want to go do that?
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard to
a lot of students
talk
are gone.
people into, it's hard to generate that. Like, I'm always excited about that game. Like, oh, what's the best thing I could do after Thanksgiving? Oh, there's a huge game going on. And after having covered Stanford, that game's a reality every other year, right?
Yeah.
They're either at Stanford to finish the year or they're at USC to finish the year. So it's this big thing. And, you had Carson Palmer knock down the Heisman, right, with that game in that window. So I hope it's close. I think it should be. Like if you're not going to that game,
what are you waiting
what
for?
were you? Yeah. What are you waiting for? Like I don't understand.
If USC like loses this week to Arizona or something, then maybe not. But I think even if Notre Dame's bad, as long as USC's been pretty good, which we think they will be, I think you got a good shot.
It might be the highest attended game for regular tickets and one of the lower attended games for all students, considering that they'll have their student tickets. But I know a lot of people that aren't coming back early from Thanksgiving because, of course, classes restart back on the Monday after the game, and some students don't want to give up another couple days at home to come back for a Notre Dame game, especially this year where the game's not quite, I don't think, going to be as polarizing as we expected it to be coming into the year. Two more rapid-fire ones. Do you think the NCAA is going to investigate what Lendell White said recently? I don't know if you guys saw what he said. I believe it was on a podcast saying that when he moved in at USC, he found a bag of money in his apartment.
Yeah, Lendell likes to talk too. So, no, I don't think
he cleaned that up too.
I think so.
He said, take a joke, people.
Yeah.
I guess my rapid fire would be, God, I hope not, but it's the NCAA and given a chance to do the right thing and the not right thing. Talk about your coin flip with the USC tournament. They're way over into the more likely to do the annoying thing. So who knows?
I think
Let's
they got
hope
their hands
not.
full right now with all the NIL stuff. So I don't think they can worry about anything old
from
statute of
decades ago.
limitations.
Yeah, what are we doing?
They can't take Reggie Bush's Heisman away twice. So
Exactly.
We'll see. And then the last rapid fire one is, what does the defense look like next year? And this is something that I've thought about, is like the USC defense does have a lot of young pieces. You're going to return 2 freshman All-American from last year, and Eric Gentry and Kalen Bullock. Tui Pelotu's probably gone. We'll see about Mekhi Blackman, but I think that you've got a lot of young pieces that profile to stay for next year.
I think you've added like real bona fide superstars on the offensive side, and they added good players on the defensive side. They probably need to try to get, if you can get a stud defensive tackle, you can get a stud rush end or something, you might see that portal aspect of it get hit a little harder.
I think the line of scrimmage on both ends is incredibly fascinating for USC.
Need to address
next year. Like, it's going to be, however they do it, it's going to be a vastly different group. It'll be really interesting to see what they do about it.
It feels like since Juju Smith-Schuster and Adoree Jackson, that 1 year where it was kind of the decision where USC fans weren't sure whether they were going to stay or come back, haven't felt like they've had such a polarizing decision. I think along the offensive line, you're going to have a lot of those this offseason, whether it's Brett Nealon deciding to go to the draft, Justin Dedich could potentially decide to stay and switch over to center, which he was recruited at, which would be huge because then you're filling a hard to fill spot with someone who's played at an all Pac-12 level. So I think that's kind of one area where you're going to have to look. But for the defense, I think they've got some pieces, and you might, again, look at another big transfer portal year. But let's get to our predictions because it's a 15.5-point spread. There's a couple questions about, over-under. Does SC give up more or less than 27.5 points? Someone asked if Cal scored 49 against Arizona, how many points is USC going to score? So we can kind of give our spread picks and maybe a score prediction if you have one in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll start full disclosure, pretty much all the last couple years I've picked against USC in the spread and done really well. And this year I went completely with USC in the spread. I believe 5-2 are my picks so far. This is going to be the first week I'm going to take the opponent. I'm going to take Arizona and the 15.5 on the road. I mean, this Utah-Washington State game right now in the second quarter, 7-7. Utah was a road favorite. I just feel this week in the Pac-12, and we've seen this a lot, that a lot of home dogs getting a lot of points. And I think USC is going to win the game, but I think it's probably more like 10 or even 14 points. That's a pretty good win. You're talking about winning by 3 scores to cover this spread. And I'm just not – USC could do it. USC could win 55-7. That. If that happened, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, that's shocking. Certainly would not be shocking. I think it's just more likely though that they're going to give up some points. Arizona's going to be feisty. Homecoming, their score. If Arizona scores 30 and USC scores, 45, you're still not covering. That's still not a cover in this game. So 45-30, you're like, oh, that's a comfortable win. You score a lot of points. So that's why I'm going to just take the points on this one. First time. Maybe I'm wrong, but first time I'm going to take the opponent in points.
Yeah, I mean, I think my feel in terms of confidence is the same as yours, but just on the other side of it. I picked USC. That's a big number.
Yeah. Did I talk you into
It's a big. Well, I almost talked myself out of it as I was submitting it. When we do it for the article. That's a big number under any circumstance, in any context, right? But I guess at the end of the day, I'll say what is likely to happen. I think USC is going to get into the 40s because, as I think Jack said, it's been 40 or above for the offense in every game but one this season. But 2, right?
And Arizona's given up 3 losses, 49 points each time.
Arizona is putrid defensively. I see Arizona getting to the low 20s, and then I see enough USC takeaways to keep them down there.
Okay.
So 42-24, which gets it done for me, right?
Yeah.
Not a math guy, but that gets it done, right? But 42-27 does not.
Right.
So I'm going to be rooting against some 48-yard Arizona field goal with 6 seconds left that no one's going to be caring about, but it's going to be determining, my level of expertise for the week.
Yeah, you have to worry about the backdoor aspect of this too, because USC could be up clearly by 3 scores, 24 points or 21 points, a lot of it, and then Arizona gets a garbage time touchdown, and they end up covering. So yeah, we'll see. All right, what do you got, Jack?
Well, I think you guys are kind of conservative about it. I mean, saying USC is going to score 42 when in all the 3 of the last 4 games for Arizona, they've allowed exactly 49 points. USC hasn't been in above the 50 since the Rice game where they put up 66. I'm rather confident they're getting to 50 points, and it's hard to not win by more than 15.5 points when you're scoring
if you get to 50. That's true.
So even Arizona, they've scored 30-plus points in 5 of 7 games. I believe USC's averaging 22-ish points a game given up. So even if you have Arizona in that range where you can score, if you're them, up to 35 points-ish, and if USC's in the 50s, USC's still covering the spread. I've definitely bought in to everything the players are saying this week with the energy around the confidence that they had after the Utah game. I kind of feel like this one could be not a game pretty early on, and I think USC is going to look to fight some demons after the Utah game, and they're going to score a lot of points against Arizona. And the defense isn't perfect, but at the same time, that's what we kind of said going into the Washington State game. We're like, they can have a pretty good offense, and the defense bounced back in that game. So I don't think we're going to see the same defense that allowed 42 points to Utah. Again, they're not perfect, but at the same time, I think this is going to be a very big game for the USC offense. I think they win by more than 15.5, get up to above 50 points.
Nice. All right.
All right. Well, it's more fun when there's battles, right?
Right.
It's
yeah.
no fun when we all pick the same thing every
Right.
week. You know what I mean? We for those of us who are not in first place,
I'm in first place.
we
so
need a chance to we need to gain some ground on the boss. So this is our chance right here.
I also have been bitten in the ankle by a lot of picks like that, where I'm like, oh, the Rice game, that's way too many points. What were they favored by, like 25-ish, 24?
It was like 29.
Jack is
something.
chastened by that game.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
Like,
and
I
I
think-
was like, there's no way. And then I was completely right for the first half, and then they decided to come out and throw 2 pick sixes right off
That
the
didn't
bat to
help
start
you,
the
yeah,
second
yeah.
half. And I'm like, well, there that goes. So, I think that I'm going to go not conservative. I feel like it's kind of more conservative now to pick USC and the points as opposed to pick them not to cover.
Yeah, I would just say if this was a home game, I would pick USC minus 17 or something like that. But just being on the road, I'm telling you, it's just
Pac-12 after dark.
Pac-12 games for whatever reason have been really tough on the road. You just don't look the same. Like yeah, a lot of people are scoring a lot of points. They're doing it against Arizona at home mostly. So this is on the road. So we'll see. But scoring that many points is hard sometimes.
Can we get a day game at any point? Kind of wondering if that's ever gonna happen this season.
I mean, homecoming's a 7, so Cal.
There's only one chance left. There's only one open.
So,
well, realistically, right? I guess they could, in theory, put the Notre Dame game on it today, but
Yeah, probably
that seems
not.
destined for 5 p.m.
You would
like,
think
is
so,
it ever
yeah.
on at another? Because you have to consider the Midwest. Like they're not. That's kind of when they want to watch
Yeah.
the game, kind of a deal. So I think the UCLA. I mean, 12:30 in the classic blue
That would be
and
pretty
red
good.
uniforms.
That would be
Yeah.
good.
That would be a reward for a number of 7:30. Who even cares what uniforms?
Watch
they're
it be
wearing.
like the the Fox.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, get Gus Johnson in there. Let's
I'm
do
just
something.
worried. I already look pale enough behind the lights that, like, with all the night games, I'm not getting enough sunlight on Saturdays. So,
Yeah, no, it's
especially with the
nobody
Cal
is.
announcement for 7:30 p.m., I'm just hoping they've got another day game so I can get some sun.
Nice.
I think that's all we've got. Do you guys have any kind of final thoughts as we wrap it up?
Make sure you check out USCFootball.com.
Oh,
Lots of content going up. RJ's writing great stuff. Austin, great stuff.
Trevor, great article on Max Williams
was
this
awesome.
week.
Gotta
If you
shout that
didn't
one
read
out.
that, you need to take the time to do that. But the last thing is, we need a name for the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're throwing it out there. You're putting it out to
Yeah,
the,
do you guys so this is our Tunnel Vision studio. So that's what Jack called Tunnel Vision Studios. We do a lot of podcasts in here too, more than just Tunnel Vision, but I don't know. What do you think? USCFootball.com studio, what should we call it? If you guys have any ideas,
It's the era of branding. We've got to
it.
have.
The
We
two-
got to have it. We got to have branding.
The
We-
247 Sports USCFootball.com studio where they film all the podcasts.
plus.
plus, like
Yeah.
that one commercial.
exactly.
But yeah, send
No.
us your ideas. Tweet at any
Or
of
your
us.
sponsorship offers. Like if you
Yeah.
want it named after you, I think maybe we would be open to that.
We would definitely be open to that.
Yeah. All right.
For sure.
The
Yeah.
Thurston Howell.
Come to the Sunday show with preloaded studio name ideas, and best one will get shouted out on the show. And I'll search through them and put my favorite one on
The
the
best
screen.
one might win.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, of course. We need a name for
Get
something.
a plaque or at least a sign
Ribbon-
in
ribbon
magic
cutting
marker.
ceremony?
Put it on the whiteboard if nothing
We
else.
can put it on the whiteboard. Yeah, but make sure you hit the like and subscribe button on all that stuff. We will try to get the
Facebook.
Facebook stuff running. And I forgot we had an updated intro with some cool new highlights. So I forgot to download that. I will get that for next time. So Sunday we'll have a new intro to the show too. So those are
Way
kind
to
of fun.
tease it.
RJ, I've noticed that we're not on the intro. We're on the show, but we're not on the intro.
I
Well,
know. Well, we gotta
you got to earn it.
I'm joking.
You got to earn it.
it's
fine.
We can work on it. Yeah, we can.
I think we need a studio name before that.
I like the
so-
joy and wonder that they get when we pop on, Jack.
That's true.
You
That's
know what I
very
mean? It's
true.
like, oh, usual cast of characters. Oh, wait, no, it's the fun guys.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I think that's going to wrap up all we've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning into Tunnel Vision. Enjoy USC's game against Arizona on Saturday. We'll be back here on Sunday night. It'll be me, Ryan, and Chris. Unfortunately, no RJ till next Thursday. But we'll be breaking down everything that happens in the USC game. USC favored by 15.5. Make sure to check out uscfootball.com for all the articles and news prior to the game, and follow us all on Twitter for updates during the game. But that's all we've got. We'll see you guys on Sunday.